A letter arrives from your home insurer. They want repairs done before they agree to renew your policy, and there is a date attached. Most homeowners have one of two reactions. Either they panic, or they assume it is a suggestion and put it aside. Both reactions cost people money, and one of them can cost you your coverage. I've spent nearly a decade working inside the Canadian insurance industry. In this video, I'm going to explain what that letter actually is, exactly what to do in the first week, what proof insurers typically want, and what your options are if you cannot get the work done in time. Start with the most important distinction. A repair request from your insurer is generally not advice. It is usually a condition attached to your continued coverage. These requests typically come from one of two places. Either the insurer conducted an inspection, sometimes a physical visit, sometimes an exterior or aerial review, or something in your file triggered an underwriting review at renewal. Either way, the outcome is the same. They have identified a condition on the property they are not willing to keep insuring as is. The most common ones are predictable, roof condition, and remaining life. Older electrical, including knob and tube or certain fuse panels. Aging oil tanks, missing or damaged railings and steps, water intrusion or visible foundation issues. Sometimes it is as simple as an overhanging tree limb. It is worth understanding why this is happening more often than it used to. Insurers across Canada have tightened property standards in recent years, and inspection programs have expanded, including exterior and aerial reviews that do not require anyone to knock on your door. A property that passed without comment for years can be reviewed under a stricter standard at any renewal. If this letter feels like it came out of nowhere, that is usually why. Nothing changed at your house, the standard changed around it. What matters is that the insurer has attached a deadline. If that deadline passes without the work being done or an extension being agreed, the likely outcome is non-renewal, and a missed deadline that leads to non-renewal can make replacement coverage harder and more expensive to find than it would have been. So the practical takeaway is simple. This letter is time-sensitive, and the worst thing you can do is nothing. Here is what to do in the first week. 1. Get the requirement in writing. Specifically, a letter that says the roof needs attention is not enough to act on. You want to know what exactly they are asking for, what standard they expect, and what they will accept as evidence it was completed. Email your broker and ask them to confirm those 3 things in writing. If the request came from an inspection, ask for the relevant portion of the inspection findings. 2. Get 2 quotes, not 1. Repair requests are the moment homeowners tend to accept the first number they hear because they feel rushed. A second quote tells you whether the first is reasonable, and it sometimes reveals a smaller scope of work that still satisfies the insurer's requirement. When you request those quotes, tell the contractor specifically that this is an insurance requirement and ask them to describe the work in those terms on the quote. A quote that says roof repair is less useful to an underwriter than one that identifies what was replaced, what standard it meets, and the expected remaining life. Contractors who work in this space understand the distinction, and it costs nothing to ask. 3. Confirm the deadline and ask what happens on the day after it. Some insurers will consider an extension if work is scheduled and documented. Others will not. You need to know which situation you are in before you plan around it, and the only way to know is to ask directly. None of this is difficult. It is mostly 1 email and 2 phone calls. but it moves you from reacting to the letter to actually managing it. Once the work is done, the file needs evidence. This is where homeowners lose time unnecessarily, because they complete the repair and then have to go back and reconstruct documentation after the fact. Generally, 3 things make a clean submission: a paid invoice showing what was done and the date it was completed, photographs, ideally before and after, taken from a few angles, and the contractor's details, including company name and license or registration information where that applies to the trade. Send it to your broker as a single package rather than in pieces, and ask them to confirm in writing that the file has been updated and the condition has been cleared. A verbal confirmation that never makes it into the file is hard to rely on later. Send it as soon as the work is finished, rather than waiting for the deadline. Files take time to process, and a submission that arrives on the final day leaves no room for the insurer to come back and ask for something you did not include. 2 weeks of margin turns a stressful deadline into an administrative step. One more practical point: keep your own copy of everything. If this property changes insurers in future, a documented repair history is a genuine asset. It is evidence that a previously flagged condition was addressed properly. Now, the harder situation: what if the work is expensive, or the contractor cannot start for 2 months, or the timing simply does not work? You still have options, but they all start the same way. Tell your broker before the deadline, not after. An insurer deciding whether to grant an extension responds differently to a homeowner with a signed contract and a scheduled start date than to a homeowner who has gone quiet for 6 weeks. Ask about a phased approach, whether completing the most critical portion first would satisfy them for this renewal term. Ask whether a professional assessment from a roofer or an electrician would change their view of the urgency. Sometimes a qualified opinion that a roof has several years of life left may help resolve the issue without immediate work. It is also worth being realistic about cost. Some of these repairs are genuinely expensive. A full roof replacement is not a small number. If the work needs doing regardless, the insurance deadline is really just forcing a timeline on something that was coming anyway, and that reframing sometimes makes the decision easier. If the work does not need doing yet in your judgment, that is exactly when a professional assessment is worth the money. And if the answer is genuinely no, then this becomes a shopping problem rather than a repair problem, and you want to start that process early rather than in the final week. Other insurers assess the same property differently, and a condition that is disqualifying for one may be acceptable to another, sometimes at a different price or deductible. Here's the reframe: a repair request feels like a penalty. It is better understood as the insurer telling you, in writing and in advance, exactly what they think is wrong with the risk. Most homeowners never get that information at all. You are getting it with a window to act on it. So in the next week, get the requirement in writing, get 2 quotes, confirm the deadline, and tell your broker your plan. Do that, and many of these situations resolve quietly. The free homeowner checklist is in the description. It covers the property conditions insurers most commonly flag, useful whether or not you are dealing with a letter right now. If you found this useful, subscribe. I publish regular Canadian insurance breakdowns for homeowners. Everything I cover comes from nearly a decade working inside the Canadian insurance industry. See you next week.